I think it was back in 2015, not too long ago. I was attending this seminar about money. It was called the Millionaire Mind Intensive with the T. Harv Eker. And there was this exercise. We had to answer some questions, and I ended up being brought up to the stage and to answer some questions. And I was super excited. I was like, oh my God. The first time on stage facing that many people, I think 2,000 people. And the trainer had to ask me some questions about the exercise. And he said, so I'm going to ask you a question. You have to answer honestly. Can you do that? Sure. So he said, okay, do you know the exact amount of money that you have in your bank account right now? Your everyday bank account. And even if I wanted to lie, my face was the answer. I was like, oh my God, I had no idea. I couldn't even ballpark it. And I remember that I saw some faces in the audience relating to the question, to my suffering, say, me too, man, me too. But I was super embarrassed, and it didn't go the way I wanted it to go, because I was, I tried to say something funny to be smart, but it failed. It was bad. But at that time, I remember that it was from that moment on, I decided that I wanted to fix my relationship with money. I was afraid of money. Some would argue and say, maybe you were afraid of not having money, which is, it makes more sense. But the thing is, the feeling gets confused. And before you know it, you just don't want anything to do with money. You don't understand it. So I wanted to fix that. And it was a life-changing moment. Why am I telling you this now? If you have good health, if you have good relationships, if you have a balance in your life, you have everything that matters, right? But there's some things still missing, and you're not 100% happy. And I know what it is. You need money. And you could say, but Jack, money comes with, when you're doing what you love. You got to do what you love, and then money will come. And I agree. But you gotta love money too, right? So I'm starting this video here this way for two main reasons. The first one, because I want to talk about money. It is something that prevents us from being successful, and it is something we need in order to have the lifestyle we want. So we're going to talk about that, and now we'll help you reach what you want. 8 to 15,000 US dollars a month selling your coaching services. It is possible. I have done it. Clients of mine, they have done it, and it is possible. If you do what I tell you here in this video series, if you follow the instructions, you get the work done, you will be able to reach $8,000 to $15,000 a month selling your coaching services. It is possible. And that's the reason number one, talking about money. And the reason number two is we're gonna talk about storytelling. That's one of the most important and most powerful techniques to connect with your audience and gain their trust and sell your services. It's not an easy process, but it's simple enough. We're gonna talk about finding your client, engaging, connecting with them, prospective client at this stage, and then converting them into paying clients, and then you will be able to sell. So to have the lifestyle you've always wanted, you need to have money. You need to be successful, and in order to be successful as a coach, you have to be selling your services. We want to help, we want to serve, but we need to make money, right? So that's the reason we're talking about money. But in this video, we're going to focus on the storytelling part of this whole process. I started out as a life coach back in 2013. At the time, I was an account executive for a TV network. I was selling TV spots. And I had this client. Her name was Amanda. She was the head of marketing at this Honda dealership. And I used to visit her to, talk about the account, because the dealership was my client. And we would have coffee, talk about stuff. And I mentioned that I wanted to become a life coach. I was actually being certified. I was being trained to become a life coach. I wanted to pursue that career. And she got interested in the subject. She wanted to know more. And she said that after I became a coach, she would be my first client. And she became my first client. So I was super excited because I had the first one. And so I was lucky, right? Was I? I wasn't good at selling my services, and having that client, the first client, that easily didn't help at all. I thought that I would be able to start selling more and in an easy way, and it wasn't like that at all. I've been a salesman in my entire life. So just an example, in 2010, I was selling aviation parts. I was working in the aviation industry. I sold temperature sensors, aircraft turbines, and then I sold software. I sold electronics, and I was pretty good at it. So I could sell anything. So, selling something that I'm passionate about, my coaching services would just be the easiest one. And boy, was I wrong. So there's a way for you to learn how to sell your coaching services following 3 processes. You got to find your client, you got to connect with them, gain their trust, and the storytelling technique comes here in the second step. And the third one is to sell, to learn how to convert and sell your services. And we're going to be talking about all of them in this process. But today, the storytelling technique in step number 2. The best way to connect with your audience is through authenticity. You be yourself. You show that you're being authentic. You want to show that you are one of their own, and then they trust you. Once you get their trust, then you can offer your help. You can tell them that you can help them, and they're going to be interested in buying what you have to offer. That's basically why we have to be connecting through authenticity to gain their trust. So some years ago, I was helping a client online. She was my first international client. She lived in Switzerland. And we were talking about limiting beliefs, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember that we were talking about the technique, and she said, "Oh yes, Jack, I think I get it. Just like that story you told us about that girl who was upset because of the pattern that she had lived." And I was like, well, "What are you talking about? I don't know about no girl." and she went on and said, "No, Jack, yeah, that story about that girl that was sad that because she didn't trust you." And I was like, "Oh, right. And then I remembered the story that she was talking about. I told a story about this girl to use an example when I was teaching that very technique in 2013. Many years prior to that moment, during a live stream, I was actually giving a lecture. It was a lecture at this company I worked for as a coach, speaker, and she was watching that. We hadn't even been introduced to each other at the time, so we didn't know each other. And she watched my presentation, and she knew all about the technique and the story itself. And I was impressed. Why am I telling you this now? Again, because that's how powerful stories are. She knew everything about the technique. She knew how to explain it, and she even remembered the story. So we get that. Stories are perfect. But there's a catch here. I had a client last year who was consistent with her social. She would post on her social media, tell stories, and try to connect with her audience. And she did well. She would be very charismatic. She would know how to tell stories, how to talk about her services. She was showing up, and that's the most important part. The problem was that she didn't know her ideal client very well. She didn't understand what they wanted to hear from her. And so that's what we did during our sessions, during the program that she did with me. We found who her ideal client was. We worked on her niche, and then we identified her specific market. And so we were able to craft the right message. And she told me then, a month later, that she sold her first program to an ideal client. And that person was the person that she was envisioning when she did the exercise to create her avatar, the perfect ideal client. It was the same person that she was thinking about when she was doing the exercise. It was awesome. I was super excited. If you're not very used to this technique, to this strategy, you are probably asking yourself some questions. And I get asked questions all the time. I've been teaching this since 2014. Storytelling. I did seminars all the time, and I got many questions. I would get questions about that, and some people would like that, some people wouldn't like it. Say, well, I don't feel comfortable. I don't know why that is important, and those are my favorite ones. I love to answer those questions and talk about those objections. I can call them objections as well. So I'm going to be answering some questions here. I have some questions that I get a lot, and we're going to go over them in this video. Here's the first one. When should we use stories? When do I tell a story? That's the great question. That's actually the main question, the most asked question. When should we tell stories? And the answer is simple: all the time. I mean, not all of your content, but all the time. If you want them to trust you, you want to talk about how you went through a similar situation. You want to talk about how you overcame it and how you fixed the problem, how you solved that pain that you had, and that's how you relate to your audience. You talk about stories. So it's all the time. If you are creating content every day, if you are posting videos, if you're going live every day, you can talk about the techniques. You can talk about some questions you get, Q&A, different forms to interact with your audience. But you can sprinkle some stories throughout the whole process. And you can start your video with a story. You can tell a story in the middle of your video, or your video could be a story itself. Just that. Like I did in the beginning, I started this video with the story. I told a story in the middle about my client in Switzerland. And you can tell a story and leave a lesson. So all the time you tell stories. That's a question I get a lot. And what kind of stories? That's another question. Personal stories. A story of a moment in life when you faced a challenge and you had to fix it. You had to follow through. You had to push through. You had to move forward. You had to get up and start again. You learned something from that challenge and you did something about it. And you want to teach them what you did. That's basically the framework of the storytelling technique. You start with the story, something that happened to you, and then you leave a lesson. Those are the stories we tell to connect with our audiences. That's what I did in the 2 stories I told in this video now. There's another question here, super interesting. Some people say the coaching process isn't about yourself. It's about the client. And I see this one as an objection, and I love this one. People say coaching isn't about yourself, it's about the client. So you shouldn't be telling stories all the time about yourself. You shouldn't be talking about yourself. And the answer is to this objection is, okay, when you're working with the client, when you want them to grow, you want them to learn something about themselves, you ask questions. You ask them questions so that they can ask themselves some questions and then decide whether they want to move this way or go that way. And that's the coaching process. You ask your client some questions. I get that. But when you want to sell something and you want them to understand who you are and where you come from, they need to trust you. They need to understand that the way you see things in life. And that's when the stories come in. You can teach your audience a different way of seeing things in life. So everything that is happening around me, I learn a lesson and I want to share that. That's how cool I am. That's the way you want your clients to see you. Oh, he's always learning and he knows how to share those things he learns. And that's the power of telling stories, engaging and connecting with your audience, with your prospective clients. So you don't have to be talking about yourself all the time. There's a big difference between talking about yourself and telling personal stories linked with a lesson. So that you cannot simply tell a story and just leave it at that. You have to tell a story and at the end, you leave a lesson. There's a structure. You tell a story and then you leave a lesson. The person is interested in the lesson, not in the story. But the lesson wouldn't be as significant if it wasn't for the story that came first. So the only reason we're telling the story here before we leave the lesson is because we want them to pay attention, to listen to us. That's why we're telling the story, so they can start listening. Oh, okay, I'm interesting. Oh, cool story. I love stories, so I wanted to pay attention. So they pay attention to the story, and then you gain their trust. You have them connected, and that's when you leave the lesson. So the lesson here is the technique, is what you want them to learn from you. And then that happens followed by a story. So there's a structure. It's not only talking about yourself, it's always leaving a lesson. You start with the date. It was in 2015, I was participating, I was attending this event, blah, 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 and this happened. And then I learned something. Why am I telling you this? That's the pause you give. Why am I telling you this? People go, yeah, why is he telling me this? Because in life, it's super important to realize that we have to fix a relationship with money. It's something that happens. That's the lesson right there. So you're not talking about yourself all the time. There's another question here. I see some speakers telling tales or fables. Is it the same technique? And that's a great question. It is still storytelling, but it's not the same kind of storytelling. We use the personal stories kind of storytelling technique because we want to connect with our audience through authenticity. We see people talking different stories. Once upon a time, there was a princess at this castle, blah, 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 blah. Those stories are common. You see speakers telling them at events when they are on stage speaking, and it's a normal thing, and it works. You use them in your presentation. You use them like when you're teaching classes, or you want to give an example. You want the structure of your presentation to be dynamic. That's why you tell a story of a princess, a fable, a tale. You leave a lesson attached to that story as well. But it's not the same as telling a personal story, because you want your audience, you want your prospective clients to understand what you went through and how you fixed that, and what you learned from that experience, and how you can teach them, they can fix themselves that problem that they're having. That's why personal stories is so important. So it's not about telling your neighbor's story. I get that all the time. In the exercises during my seminars, people would go to because I would, they would tell stories one at a time, and they would come up with a story. So my neighbor had this crazy experience, blah blah blah, or a friend of mine, and no. But this is a great story. I gotta tell this one. This is the one I picked, and I go, okay, but that's not yours. Yeah, but I don't have an exciting story to tell. It doesn't matter. If it's a story that happened to you, you will get the connection you want from your audience, because it's yours. Even if the neighbor's story is much more exciting, it's not about the experience, the story itself. It's about the relation you want to create with your audience. So with your audience, don't tell your neighbor's story, don't tell your friend's story, tell yours, and that will connect more than if you told your neighbor's story. So sometimes you see a salesperson or a coach or a presenter or someone selling something. You have salesman A and B here. At the end of the presentation, you buy from the person, the letter B person. You don't know why, but you decided to buy from them, and that's what happens in out there in the world. People buy from other people, and they don't know why. They don't know the reasons. They just felt like, I don't know, I just like this guy more. And they knew how to connect with you. They knew how to gain your trust. And they use techniques, different techniques. And the most important one of the most powerful one, is the storytelling technique. So I want you to do something. This week, you will post a video on your social. It could be on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You will tell a story, starting with the date, and you're not only telling the story, you will leave a lesson. So you decide the lesson you want to leave. You decide what you want to teach your audience, something you've learned, something significant, something meaning, something that changed your life. It doesn't have to be like a crazy experience, something that like amazing, life-changing, something that was meaningful, and you want to share that. And it has to be followed by a story. So you will start with a date, May last year, or in 2018, 2020, something happened. You tell the story, and then you say, why am I telling you this now? You breathe in, you pause for a second, you let them wonder, yes, why is she telling me this? Why is he telling me this? And then you go, because, and then you tell them why you're telling that. That's the exercise I want you to do. That's your homework.